Thank you very much, Alma Vital, the moderator. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, let me again express my profound appreciation to you for honoring our call whenever we make it. No matter how short the notice, you always find time to come and listen to the United Democratic Party for we to engage in conversation with you, the gentlemen of the press, and through you, with the nation. I appreciate your presence here. But I am indeed undertaking this particular exercise this afternoon with a very heavy heart. I am not a social media person, and because of this, I lose track, or I don't get to be abreast with information that is appearing on the social media. But I've just been told of the demise of a very good patriot, a man who has devoted his life to the service of this country. He was one of the principal architects in the fight against dictatorship in the Gambia, and indeed one of the people promoting democracy in the Gambia. He did all he could in his power as a Gambian, by his writing, by his speeches, to galvanize the people of the Gambia against the dictator Yahya Jammeh. Alas, he saw him out, but maybe he hasn't seen all that he wanted to see in his crusade for the restoration of democracy in this country. This gentleman was my classmate. We were in St. Augustine's together, and we all left St. Augustine Form 5 and parted our ways. But about 2013, our paths crossed again when I visited the United States of America. This gentleman was Matthew Jallo. Matthew Jallo is a well-known Gambian who was in the forefront of the fight against dictatorship in this country, and he did all that he could in his power to ensure that this country is giving the government that it deserves. I want to express my profound condolences and sincere sympathy to his family in Samba, to all his friends, his former classmates, and indeed to those who brought him up, that is the Catholic missionary here. And I want to say that Gambia today is poorer by a very good patriot. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we are gathered here today not really to be giving the conventional New Year messages that we used to do. But I want to first of all say to all of you, Happy New Year, and that we hope that this year will envelop the best for all of you, and that together, all Gambians together, will ensure that this country moves in the direction that we all want it to be. We hope that we can change the trajectory in which this country is going on. We have just ended the year 2023, and indeed, this year, 2023, was a year of disaster, a year of misfortune, a year that is described as annus horribilis. And indeed, it is so. The annus horribilis is glaring in the 2023 as well as the 2024 budgets the government has just recently presented to Gambians. These two budgets and their allocation patterns show that the government does not have a clearly articulated development program or vision for the country, nor does it prioritize the welfare of the ordinary Gambians. These budgets are an exacerbation of the inequality already existing in our society. The rich, the powerful, and the connected are the major beneficiaries of our national resources. When we, I may use the communist language, lumpen proletariats, are the ones who have been missed out deliberately out of this budget. And this has been done while the economy is steeped in inequality, poverty, unemployment, and entrenched rampant systemic corruption. Ours is an economy and a state that has been captured by sectoral cartels and special interest groups. Reliance on a national budget, which is financed by a mix of borrowing, taxation, and grants, cannot develop our country. The President has recently announced a series of service taxes increases which will further fuel the hardships Gambians continue to face. Indeed, he calls this as non-taxable revenues, that all this will be hiked, so that those of you who really go to the courts to file your processes is now becoming more difficult for you because it will be too expensive for the poor man in Tankonkunda to be able to afford the filing fees. So he'll be denied access to justice. Your land rents are going to be increased. Your fees for renewal of leases are going to be increased. The cost of your passports are all going to be increased so that the ordinary person will not be able to have access to these services because of the increases in the rate that used to be charged on them. And this is all done in order to be able to finance their own wasteful spending. And indeed, this wasteful spending, we can see it in the budget. The projected fiscal deficit for 2024 is 4.45 billion, or 2.55 of GDP. The debt to GDP ratio is about 85% of GDP. Our national debt as of 2023 is $110 billion. The interest payments on our national debt increased from 3.5 billion to 7.5 billion, which is more than the combined allocation for health, education, and agriculture. Yahya Jammeh, in all his madness in 22 years, left us with a national debt of 48 billion. While President Barrow, who claimed to be a man of austerity, who claims to be a man, came to calm down on excess on wastages, has increased our debt to 62 billion by 62 billion in 7 years. And this, of course, has brought up our national debt to the global figure of $110 billion. Our balance of payments and terms of trade are all negative. The official rate of inflation is said to be 18%, but the market tells us that the rate of inflation is much higher than 18%. Ordinary Gambians are struggling to make ends meet. Those of you who went to Serakunda market and face the butcher or the fishmonger or the vegetable vendor would know that really the rate of inflation is far above 18%. Those of us whose pockets are affected know that. But government, in its desire to mislead the Gambian people, pegs the inflation rate at 18%, which is really a misleading statistics for the Gambian people. The international travel for 2024 is increased from $40 million to $60 million. The cost of our ministers, our directors, our president, the cost of their travels abroad is increased from 40 million to 60 million. And indeed, the cost of the medical treatment for the few privileged people has also been increased from 40 million to 60 million. You and I, Rutherford, are not catered for in this amount, in this allocation. This is for the ministers, the spouses, and indeed those who are well connected to them to foot their medical bills abroad. Now, the specific allocations to the offices of the president is 872.6 million. Foreign affairs is 1.7 billion. Finance and economic affairs, 2.05 billion. Infrastructure, 2.6 billion. Youth and sports, 122 million, 0.3. Basic education, 2 billion. Secondary education, 2 billion. Minister of Health, 2.3 billion. Interior, 1.58 billion. Tourism, 45.1 million. It's obvious from these allocations that government is placing priorities on areas that do not deserve that sort of attention. $872.6 million is allocated to the president's office. For what purpose? We all know that the president's office is probably the least productive sector of the economy of this country. The least productive sector of this country. In fact, it is the sector where gossips is the center of gossips. And how can anybody in his right mind put $872.6 million to such a sector? As compared to youth and sports, which is only 122.3 million. No wonder the GFF is having hand in hand going around seeking donations to finance the AFCON, the AFCON campaign. The resources that are allocated to office like Office of the President, better part of that should have been given to the Ministry of Youth and Sport, particularly when we already know that this year, Gambia Football Federation or the Scorpions will be embarking on a campaign which is very expensive, a campaign to bring us honor, a campaign to ensure that our country is put on the map of the world through our youth. But no, that is not their priority. Their priority is really to put money into a sector which misuses those funds for purposes that are not for the promotion of the welfare of the people of Gambia, but for the promotion of the welfare of specific individuals. And indeed, you know that some of these funds are used for purposes that are completely unconnected to government activities. So you can see how the misallocations are, and this is what is going to make the year 2024 another year of misfortune, another year of disaster for the Gambian people. 2023 really was a year that Gambians had hoped that our democratization process would have really taken steps, concrete steps, that would convince everyone that really Gambia is ready for a new constitution. The security of our electoral system, our constitution, the draft constitution remains in coma. And which means I do not know, whether it's in the president's office or it's in the Minister of Justice, but it's in a state of coma and needs to be resuscitated. And there are absolutely no concrete steps have been taken to ensure that this is done. And the constitution has to be put in place so that the other legal parameters, other legal reforms can really properly follow. The Elections Act ought to have really been an appendage to the elections, to the Constitution, because the Constitution should have provided the platform, the foundation for the Elections Act. That is also gathering dust somewhere in the National Assembly, and nothing is being done about it. The institutional reforms that we had envisaged is certainly not taking place, and is much talked about security sector's reform has been more of lip service than real action. Every time we are told that steps have been taken to ensure that proper reform of the security sector is carried out, but none concrete step has really been taken which could convince any Gambian that this particular sector, as important as it is, has been given the needed reform it deserves. Gentlemen of the press, I've referred to 2023 as a disaster, a year of misfortune. Our country is facing a national disaster with regard to the backway and irregular migration. Thousands of our youth from across the country and in every community are taking the backway because they desperately need to make a decent and honest living to support their families. A national disaster should therefore be declared with a clearly articulated strategy to address irregular migration and to create youth employment and empowerment. Few months ago, the number of Gambian youths who perished in the Mediterranean Sea due to the careless policies of this government, the number is very frightening. Khartoum, the community of Khartoum alone, registered 27 young people who lost their lives just from one community. Jambur registered 41 youths, and Bakau registered 21 youths who lost their lives. These are just examples, samples taken from 3 communities. We had disasters in the Nyomis, people from Nyomis, in other parts of the country. And indeed, all these young people have lost hope in the country. They have thought that with the change of government, their condition would improve, that employment would be created, if not direct employment by the government, but then conditions would be created which will really make it easier for them to pick up employment, either self-employment or employment in the or employment in the or employment in other places. And with regards to the state or trust our democracy, the following democratic principles have been eroded due to weaponization of state institutions against political opponents. I am sure that you ladies and gentlemen of the press are aware and in fact are witnesses to how the state is weaponizing institutions in order to thwart our democratic process. Measures have been taken to silence opponents. The press have been threatened in the past year, all in a bid to silence them. And the press is a very important component, important pillars, important agents in the promotion of democracy, in the creation of democracy in the country. Where you have a free press, you can be sure that you can have a true democracy. But alas, this is not what is really happening in the country. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen of the press, you must have read in your own medium that it is proposed to increase the nomination fees for presidential candidates from its current amount to $1 million for $1 million for any candidate. You may recall that in 2015 or thereabout, Yahya Jammeh also made such a proposal, and the entire political class, including those in government today, raised hell against it. That in fact, that was employed by Jammeh to keep out potential opponents because it will be reducing participation at the presidential election, will be reducing only to the level of those who are rich, those who can offer better ideas, those who can be better leaders in the country. Because of their weak financial condition, cannot afford the $1 million. We all cried against it, and I think it was then that Yahya Jammeh decided to reduce it from 1 million to $500,000. This government that has said it wants to ensure that there's true democracy, this government that says that all those legislations by Jammeh were anti-democratic. We are only measures to muzzle the growth of political power or to give opportunity to other political parties or other political contenders to seek for the office of the president, can now turn around and really want to implement such a measure that is an antithesis of what really this government has stood for. It's also a sign or a step towards Muslim democracy, towards curtailing the ability of Gambians to really partake in presidential elections. Young men of the press, you can be sure that when I condemn this, I'm not doing so for UDP because UDP has the money to pay $1 million for its candidates. So it's not for us. It's for others who really are not in a position to do so. The independent candidates who may not be in a position to do so. You cannot just shut them out because you feel that the only way you can advance democratization, and when I say D, it's DE. It's DE, democratization, not democratization, but you really want to, backslide our democracy into situation that really that's really not within the contemplation of the Gambian people. There is lack of respect for the rule of law by the government. And when I say by the government, I mean not by the government, either the central government, the executive itself, or its agencies, such as the security. We've now seen that the Yaya Jammeh style of police operation has really reared its head, and indeed, it is one that has taken center stage. Fridays are the days that are assigned for the arrest of alleged suspects who have committed crimes. Fridays are the days that are assigned for doing that. So that Saturday and Sunday, they can be kept in custody, and while the clock ticks the minutes, for them to clock the 72 hours before any action is done. That was the Jammeh style of doing things. That is the dictator style of doing things, and that is why I do not hesitate to say that, that Adama Barrow is gradually becoming a dictator in this country. And these are the proofs of it. And if anybody thinks that I'm wrong, please engage me and ask me to give you the evidence, and I'll give you the evidence. Barrow is gradually becoming a dictator in this country. The diversity, equity, and inclusion are essential democratic principles that aim to promote fairness, equal opportunities, and respect for all individuals, regardless of their background or identity and perspectives. These principles are about creating a more just and inclusive society. The near insults, the disrespect that is made to some members of the opposition just confirms this principle that I'm saying, because they are unwilling to accept that diversity, they are unwilling to accept differing views, and because of that, treatments are being made out of opposition that they do not deserve. The opposition is denied constantly access to the national media. What we see when some group of NPP non-entities organize a non-event. And when I say non-event, I mean a non-event that is not government. You find GRTS there in their full gear with more than the number of people, more than the number of cameras that are needed for the occasion. When opposition parties, particularly UDP, holds events of a national nature where they are requested to be, they do not show up. And that is contravention of the Constitution. And indeed, it was one of the issues that Adama Barrow found as a grouse with the Jammeh administration, that you cannot really run a true democratic state when others are excluded from the use of state resources. That unequal treatment is probably becoming the hallmark of this government. The nexus of rampant corruption, lack of transparency and accountability, the drug menace, and interference in the operation of area councils and municipalities are a direct threat to our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, let me say that the Auditor General's report, or reports from the Auditor General, which some uninformed people, some uneducated people consider as opinion, shows the level of corruption in this country. That it is cankerworm that is destroying the fabric of our society. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate, for once, the National Assembly for at least passing the anti-corruption bill into law that has dragged for more than 4 or 5 years. I want to congratulate them for doing that. But also, let there be the political will on the part of the executive to implement the Anti-Corruption Act to its letter. There should be no sacred cows. There should be no selective investigation of corrupt practices. It should go right across the board. And indeed, people who are suspected of harboring illicit gains, illicit proceeds of corrupt practices should really also be made to face the full force of the law. Otherwise, the passing of the anti-corruption bill into act will just be a mere facade. It will be a mere window dressing. It will not be a real drive against the fight. It will not be a real drive against the fight against corruption. And I challenge the government. That the 750,000 dollars, which I hear the guys called Nakodo. It should be certainly a prime candidate for investigation before this anti-corruption tribunal that should be set up. Our country has lost respect and credibility in the eyes of the world because this country is being turned into the transit route for drug and drug dealers. How many tons of cocaine, how many tons of drugs are confiscated or are impounded, and yet we have not heard of any successful prosecution of any of those people that have been arrested. So take the chance, bring your drugs into the Gambia, to have it transited wherever you want to, and if you are caught, we'll go underground and stop any prosecution by escorting the evidence that the prosecutors needed, or the law enforcement needed to put before the court. I was amazed when I heard an audio where someone who is alleged to be an imam, who calls himself an imam, and indeed who is known to be close to the corridors of power, confessing that he has talibans. He does not need money from anybody. But he has talibans in Europe who are drug dealers. They give him money. That person is certainly should have been arrested by the drug law enforcement agencies for aiding and abetting drug dealers. Because whatever he does, whether spiritually or otherwise, he is aiding and abetting drug dealers, and that is why he is being given money. So the drug menace is really very close to the corridors of power. Because this particular imam, I know personally, and I know that he has undertaken several errands, so-called religious errands, on behalf of people who today are really in control of the government machinery of this country. So if you can have our the threat that is exposed by drug traffickers in this country will certainly not be seriously handled by the powers that should have that handle it. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I think everybody wants to have free movement of vehicles on our roads, free movements of bicycles, and indeed unimpeded movements of pedestrians, who will not be put in fear of being knocked down by vehicles, so that the road path, the footpaths, would be cleared of all obstacles. That is indeed expected to be done by any responsible authority. But why do you have to demolish structures that have absolutely no bearing on the roads, that have no obstruction to the road? In fact, why destroy things that have been put in places to stop rain getting into shops, or really serve as canopy, so that it can be a rain breaker, can be wind breaker, and they do not have anything to do with the traffic on the roads. This, I think, is what has been wrong with this exercise. That we know everywhere in the world, beautification of cities, beautification of neighborhoods. People grow flowers and so forth outside of their homes in order to beautify the places. I am yet to be educated, but I have not seen anywhere in the Fiscal Plan and Development Act that says that you cannot really beautify the frontage of your property. I have not seen it, although I heard someone say that you have to get a permit for it. And I certainly want to be educated, because we are not technicians. We looked at the law and we didn't find it in the law, but maybe there is somewhere in your notes or directives that says you cannot do that. So let us do this road clearance with a human face. Let us not deprive these poor women, let us not deprive these young men who have their car washing facilities around on the roadside. Let us allow them to carry out this exercise so that they will not venture on the back way. If you move out those young people who have their car washing facilities on the road, you move them away, where do they go? You certainly cannot have a car wash inside your father's compound. And indeed, all these people come from afar and they converge in places to really undertake these to carry out these decent earning activities, so that they can live a decent life, an honorable life, a life that is free of criminality, a life that will not really spur them to go and find greener pasture elsewhere. But the government has to help them. Indeed, what I would have expected the government to do was to organize these young men and women, organize them in locations. You allocate them land and give them all the facilities so that they could carry out their car washing activities and earn decent living. And of course, that will be a way of employing the young people. And ladies and gentlemen, the secrecy and lack of transparency in the recycling of our strategic national asset, such as, of course, the Trans-Gambia Bridge, the Gambia Ports Authority, and the airport, certainly should halt. This is a government that condemned the German government for lacking in transparency. it should now be really the principal agent for transparency in this country. Yet, whatever they do with respect to our national assets have not been done with any degree of transparency. I do not believe that it is enough for the minister to go to the National Assembly and, excuse my word, and regurgitate what he has stated in a press interview. Documentary evidence should be made available to lawmakers so that they can really examine the documents and see whether or not what was being done was in the best interest of the country, and that the giving away of this asset will not in fact compromise our national security, because every aspect, all these institutions, the Gambia Post Authority, the airport, their operations have national security elements. There should be national security concerns. You cannot really give our airport to people who really are not responsible for managing the security affairs of this country, and who only interest in those assets are really the profits that they can make. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this year is not going to be different from the year 2023. This year probably will be worse than 2023, because this government has taken it upon itself not to care for what people say. This government that prices itself to say that we have the power, we have the authority to do what we want to do, and we will do it. A government that says nobody can stop us from doing what we want to do has nothing in store for you but misfortune and disaster, because they will be reckless in their thinking, they will be reckless in their actions, believing that nobody on the surface of this earth can really stop them from doing what they want to do. A government that you elected, a government to whom you ceded your power, your sovereignty, and asked them to be your agents in the exercise of your delegated power, can turn around to you and tell you, I am as powerful as Yahya Jammeh, in fact, more powerful than Yahya Jammeh, because apart from all the security apparatuses that Yahya Jammeh had, I also have the economic. Such a government certainly will do things without regard to you, without regard to your views. And indeed, we have seen it happen in the way that they have treated the area council, the municipalities. And indeed, that is what this government will continue to do, to stifle the aspirations of the Gambian people, to stifle the wishes and desires of the Gambian people, and all that in order to self-perpetuate. But I think all of us should really commence our drive, should now commence our efforts, serious efforts, to terminating this government's existence in 2026. It must start now, and we cannot postpone it. We cannot wait until 2026 and start on that exercise. It has to be done now. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I thank you for your attention, and I hope my ramblings make any sense to you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we have another 30 minutes at least to ask questions of the Secretary General and Party Leader. We will ask kindly for you to indicate your name, the media organization you are representing here, and you can ask your question in English, Wolof, and English. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Manja, and I work with the employees. When you start, you also mentioned about that constitution. You claim that it's informal. And the president in his media message mentioned that he's got a commitment to bring back that constitution. But will you in passing, or will you support any idea when some sections in the draft constitution that was passed by members of the Constitutional Commission submitted when it is added? Will you support that draft constitution?
If the constitution is altered?
Yes, we go on the plan. Will you support that idea? Will you pass it, or will you call for Gambian people?
Let me say, I'm not sure how much committed the president is to the introduction of the draft constitution. You know, this president has been talking about his commitment to the Gambia having a new constitution. And yet, we saw how he manipulated it. We saw how he got his political advisor to go on Kelfatu to say that this constitution is a bad constitution, this draft constitution is a bad constitution. We are going to make sure that it does not survive. We are going to kick it out. Siakajata did so on Kelfatu. And he was speaking with full authority and with President Adamabaro in the knowledge of it. He was never reprimanded. So that shows that, you know, when they talk of having a new constitution, it's just mere lip service. It's not something that they really mean. And when the constitution got into the National Assembly, the entire UDP membership in the National Assembly voted for it. Barrow, his political allies in the National Assembly, all voted against it and defeated the constitution. And prior to that, I, on the eve of the introduction of that constitution in the National Assembly, I went on air, appealed to everybody, appealed to members of the National Assembly to really vote for this constitution, because this was what we had promised to the Gambian people. We had been yearning for electoral reform. We have been yearning for reforms of our institutions, of our laws. And the fundamental law that will provide the foundation for that, we must provide with that law, we must really make sure that it passes the National Assembly. We have been committed, and we continue to be committed to having a new constitution for the Gambia. But we will not accept, I have made this clear once, not twice, even the national facilitators. I've made it quite clear to them that not a single section of that draft constitution must be omitted from it when it comes to National Assembly. It has to come to the National Assembly, and whatever changes are going to take place will take place in the National Assembly, but we are not accepting any changes by the government or any other person outside of the National Assembly. If they do, we will vote against it. We want the constitution that the Gambian people were sensitized on. The constitution, the draft on which we spent $116 million, let it come to the National Assembly. And in the National Assembly, then whatever negotiations you want will be done by our elected representatives, not few members of the executive who sit outside and then come with a draft. We will not accept it. I made that clear, and I'm not ashamed to really make that statement. I'll continue to make that statement.
Yes. Gentlemen, yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Darboe. My wife is If I heard you clearly, you made mention of government attempts for increasing president registration candidate fee to $1 million, right?
Sorry?
I mean,
Yeah.
If I had it,
Yeah, the nomination fees.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been attempted to be increased to $1 million. Is this a good step towards all political parties? And is it a way of suppressing what the political parties or giving new aspiring candidates?
Well, yes, that's certainly my view. I mean, I'm sure you must recall it, that I think the chairperson, the National Assembly chairperson on the electoral matters, Honorable Swaibu Ture, I'm sure you must have read. I read it was in one of your papers. You must have read that that is the recommendation of their committee to hike the nomination fees to $1 million. I'm saying that it's a threat to our democracy, that is scuttling, the right of individuals who might want to contest as presidential candidates. You are depriving them of the opportunity to really contest, because an independent candidate, maybe he may have some financiers, but what are the number of political parties I see on the register with IEC? Yeah? If, in addition to those ones, you have individual members who might want to contest as independent candidates, and you charge them $1 million, really, you will really want to shut out the door to those people. And I think that is one of the threats to our democracy, that you cannot really confine the ability to contest presidential elections to only the people who are rich. And I've said that, and we are not rich, but I've said that the United Democratic Party will not be a party that will be caught by this figure. We will be able to pay it, and the president will be able to pay it. But what about others who might be very good candidates, but then do not have $1 million, or if they take $1 million in out of their campaign funds, it will really hamper their ability to carry out good and effective campaign.
What amount do you suggest could be favorable for any aspiring candidates?
Well, I must be honest with you to say that the current, I think it's $10,000. The current figure of $10,000, I think it's on the low side. But I think between $50,000 and $100,000 should be a reasonable amount. Between $50,000 and $100,000. But million, no. And then for registration of political parties also still is I think it's still 1 million. Yeah, still 1 million. So really.
Any other question? Kamaraba?
Back at Kamaraba is also the development of democracy in true democracy, one of your supporters, let's say that President I not confident because IDP get a motive, may police escort here, IDP get a motive, where drugs on here, and police sisters. The time that IDP that involved in politics. You see, finally, you know, maybe. One of these people, 1 million, already last time, at your camp, or if that's all they can, I'll have at your camp. It will remain for the nomination of them. I don't know anything. And those are in France, so yes, go. Bangkok, go to political party. Masakula, France, after all, cafe, money. Please, you never catch somebody else. So you don't need that for you.
Well, yeah, really, what do Kumodolu, where I'll come for your political layer, a bamboo, Mtebe Tembomento, Mamira Nyanto Dol Jabila, so Mamira, the other people, Zobula more Dolia, could have, but I mean, même manque inspecteur ñol ko bari même to ya wala ka civil servant public servant e mañande dabla political well that's all simem fono elo simem fono elo karola mo nak itala jube itala ba jube la ini la conscience tema wala be ke ka fo silam fo silate mampare inspector la police engage la okay mampare fe fala ma wodo maybe ata yala ko ke su wala kono do ya wanya ba bitu sabula wonya you may have about this $1 million among a good may am can lotale kuda me am ka abe mirarol kono fas ke fa manya na kala ba da ba kuma asla ka bin san kaf ka manya na kala da ba bula ko na atara ka frobe kala nomination fees da ka bo wulta dul kata wul kebe amara wo is fair enough but million killing ngole kala no ya jamela jamano la ngole kumbo ya jamano la ko ala to president ala to le mantora la ala to le notela sai tel ko be change of government kala or change of system me ya non ka ko banko sitama no al halol la même mol nyabo koti nini nata funti o jamano ko do asike moye tafula kija fara kode bara asike moye ke jakal kode ka foko fokunu menjaw yata ya jamela jamano la wonyanta nyenya la bi jamano ko ten wo wonyanta sanyant kala mole kono filto kode bare quand même faut pour ma sakunda ma ko roke political parties la dunia la do ta be jeto le fa namere ka jibere ali polls e marge percentage men so amen yake wasa kanje isi inyanta men so da asi isa determine no maybe near last local government election no niata yawe yo rekota namera UDP la ko do bisala de na le ba ke bawo ndela nga mo be da na ngeda wultani do so namera de ta sala be bari bishop telewa jansi men ka ko chairman lo mu IEC mo haklima ba mo lo mayano ka ko IEC abata mandikan tilingni to nyako no men ka nyanta political party ol tema ka sabatindi men nyanta masa kunani political party ol tema ka sabatindi wo ala report o da men submit to the National Assembly I mentioned the one ka ko masa kunani nyanta le democracy fund londi mayano ka political party no banko ka isi itanding sotno jeto na atra kavo ko be conditional melala e be sarto melala ni o sarto dimandi finance itanding sotno jeto isi ila kajol tamanino in fact constitutional review commission on men lo da tel ya nyini karo kenu atate la nyini karo kono commence ko na nyande la kabulo dum kabulo ke fonkol kodo political parties nol kodo jamal d'accord tak well at least la ko UDP d'accord la campagne ta kala bare defar na be kala fa kana ko di choro sota ya fa ko yece kota UDP affiliate to $50,000 si afenke no UDP la biro be min dole yawe le la loi ya jo direct wo is all funding the activities of the political party kadi ko natra kam ke sam la kam nga ko do nyita ngadu ibulu maybe party national do di ma wasa e mantili ista ko ta ko do nyita mo banna padion ya ko kam ko laftane 5 computers la be distributor to bureaus ya order ya samba jeto lafta nyini mayano kaf ko do ko choros na tambol ade nyimu ko mayano kam ko mazam kunda nyandale ayamira barbao nak ngamira yijila kam ko na nyoko do dila be jona de dila jawla pura yenkele ita tozal nagala ba yuri bi masuna ni tan na jeto asilo nyen pat more basically democracy fund del ba lon la de pour political parties yol me ya suppose demande fund it can benefit from it.
Yes, sir. Gentleman in white shirt.
C'est même pour un cas pour UDP ko di tali yen tambindi ngakela nyato ngoti fo jandi be nyato ngot fo jandi to bodo be sila ko pour nyato ko odo ko mbole ke kan and ka ko lafta be nyikela femme ya no ka fa man si mai fa ya ko nyim mangele so liati ko man di ko ka fo yo be femme fola me ya no ka ko sa to hypothetical situation mamira ina fa so more than human beings, they are not permanent, they are transient. Or honeyman transit. It makes you ineffective. It makes you ineffectual. Ni kuranda. You become ineffectual. Ni father. So why should I be telling people come left a connect selection content? The malo for Janin Sini better like that. I think those are futile phone calls. Memo ko ka ko do ko member will be as left the party bodo ko ni baake ka adu be kon la ko kala ba wo be ngulle be kon la ko ke sama member kala sama for election ba fa election number 2 ni election wa do sita ni member jallo ni ne ba announcement member kala UDP la candidate so we wait for that in the meantime I'm campaigning for people to join UDP. I'm campaigning for people to abandon other parties and come and join UDP so that in 2026, UDP will form the government in this country. What I want to do. Just a little rectification for you. And Madon told to the gentleman Jao, and I still get for like on the National Assembly Self-Committee on Electoral Matters, the proposal is a recommendation. I hope that it will not be endorsed by the rest of the members of the National Assembly. Nebune President Adam Barrow, Moko propose, Wamane President Barrow propose, Moko propose. Why not? Munge proposal siyo munge health jamano President Adam Barrow. President Adam Barrow minga hamne mo tahawam. In 2016, in fact 2015, we bokk UDP. Bokk na ci wax ne Yaya Jammeh nim increase nomination fees from 10,000 to 1 million was unrealistic. It was all done pour muna newal dole other political parties or hang leen opportunity pour ñu muna participate in the presidential election. Wala ci jamono nak lool warta am te xeyna ni may wax ni ena momi tam nge xalaté nonu ne warta am way nak na dess nak demé ci légui député yi ñu approve ko da man na xamna ne opposition element ci ñom dañ ko waye su ñeneen ñi ñom suñu approuvé kon nga xam ne li Adama Barrow bokk na ci toga bi so day dem National Assembly bi rek pour yakka ko fofu so li la waye pour bokk yeneen political parties nak in 2006 Fana is too early for the work about alliances. Man lima foog mooy ne every political parties, they can go to would now win elections on my own. I think so. Every political party, then go guy now. Why not? Lord Wartata not ne domina foka Kenya. Pour gain worker fight an election. We have always been open to alliances, and if again in 2006 we find it necessary to go into an alliance, certainly thank God, because Mbolo more gonna am dole than individualism. So don't bother but just a question.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Lawyer Ousainou Darboe. Honorable, you talk about UDP stand council rejecting the draft constitution. The bill is brought before National Assembly and changes are made outside the National Assembly. And knowing that some members who participated in voting against this constitution are still in the National Assembly, are you confident that if any changes that, as you suggested, to be made in the parliament, are you confident that these honorable members will do justice in terms of making amendments in this constitution that is considered to be incorrect?
And I don't understand the.
I mean, you say
that
Barrows, someone asked you a question, and Barrows says the constitution will be made back, and then you say if there is amendment or changes to be made, UDP stand firm if it is done in the National Assembly. And if it's done outside the National Assembly, you instruct members of the UDP to vote against, and you will advocate for people to vote against it. My question is now, are you confident that bringing it back to the National Assembly for the necessary changes to be made will be done according to how we feel?
Well, if it's brought to the National Assembly without any changes to be made in the National Assembly, I think will be determined by the members of the National Assembly. I cannot sit here and make a commitment for them. They are the ones who are going to look at that law, and they are the ones who will really decide whether or not they want to effect any amendments to it or not. So I cannot really make any commitment to say that they will really make changes to it because I do not sit in the National Assembly. But what I say is that, the reasonable expectation of the Gambian people, our party will always stand for that in the National Assembly when it comes to passing of any legislation, including the Constitution of the Gambia.
Okay, sorry. My question is, are you confident that they will do justice to those necessary changes?
Well, this is what I'm saying, that I do not want to make any commitment on them. And I would expect that the members of the National Assembly are in the National Assembly to really attend to the affairs of the Gambian people dispassionately. They are in the National Assembly really to do justice to whatever is brought before them. And that is what I expect them to do. But I cannot tell you that this is what they will do. Because if they decide to do something that you probably think has been the monumental injustice to that constitution, then I would have been proved wrong. So I think, let's leave it go to the National Assembly, and if any changes are going to be done, let it be done in the National Assembly. And when the National Assembly feels that there should be no changes, then let the bill be passed, and we go to a referendum.
Any more questions? Mr. Darboe wanted to ask a question of the party leader. So.
Many press conference to do because my question better is about the diaspora made a yes and somebody do. And so Jamajali not inside. Now the diaspora Kato Muke to Gambia Banco also position. The central bank recorded Jube, some of some. Remittances of Mulkadum Gambia on a 750 million. Wolo Mumbe recorded Mukana Duma Fan, Mokondo Financial. Masakunda, Araboro I promise back again. Abraham Mansayani, Ako, now winter. About China put there for the Kadeo. Kadeo Fire, Mobica and more. Kadeo Fire will civic duty, the civic responsibility. The bank put in yard. One Kadeo Fire, go it and let that take. And no sa quite a mobile dunia, you must have Mapareka. So Masakunda Mundoro back and the degree Muna, one of Masakunda Miano, who see what they would bully. Is very important because in America, at France, at German, Dunia, Bero, it's all a kumbo what you want. Nekodo Pita, the national Pita, tell the Banco, America Bula, Kabula, Nasi, and Cariboro, the campaign. I'm unfair. But a woman cannot put us for a moment. You love the Munyin in Kala, party leader, after I say. For that example, Ning Arayake, and no other Kerala, 2026, UDP must have not a Shiva. Left I answer because more better my country, Nimul the meaning for the blood. I tell you on a plan, put the diaspora. Full Nim UDP must have put that Caesar, Catun Loda UDP and Suda TV. Diaspora among Patti Kanudunia monkey. Lafano na nada sita wala UDP masakunda sita ibamuna fona diaspora isaje mfana ntelamfula mbe wulla le ngande do ko ke na lonko lampo be nyaato la binale do kilim bari nga dal mbe digole kono mo jama ke bulo mutare sa ka ko le mbake mune be nya akono bin la tele parti de ya ko mun be telefone ya akono pour next election UDP well,
Mr. So, now your question of the California Jabber. California Jabber, UDP, UDP funds for to extend the franchise to the Gambian citizens, and because you cannot accept that community as the 8th region of the Gambia, and 8th region that contributes at least 23% GDP, you cannot really legitimately shut them out from the process of deciding who should be in charge of the affairs of the Gambia. It's not fair. I want to look a lot of Bob President Jatumania, former President, committed to having a new constitution. We hope that will help so that the constitution specifically mentions diaspora voting as a key. But I also want to think that apart from the constitution, the case of Manja Darboe versus Gatoni has put beyond doubt whether a new constitution or no new constitution. Under the current constitution, Gambians can vote and should vote in diaspora. So it is only for the IEC, with that judgment in their hand, and also relying on Section 124 of the Elections Act, Natara, if a new act may not more bond. Then on the current Section 124 of the Elections Act to really extend the franchise to diaspora. The law is there. Supreme Court has decided. They will decide in the case of Manja Darboe. It's a question of just implementing the orders of that court, and also implementing or taking advantage of Section 124 of the Elections Act, which provides that the IEC should make determined to fight corruption, and that a UDP government will certainly not treat incidents of corruption the manner in which the current government is treating them. In fact, I had on various occasions challenge the government to use the anti-corruption law that was in the statute book that was passed in 2012. It may have its deficiencies, but that notwithstanding, there is a law, and it's for you to really implement that law. Take the necessary action if you are really serious in fighting corruption. Take all the necessary steps so that people will see that you are really serious in fighting against corruption. You don't have to say that I have to wait for the anti-corruption bill for national to pass when you already have one. And you are repeating that, the 2012 legislation, by the current legislation. And indeed, my take on his, I don't think it's a mistake. It's not accidental. I think it's deliberate, for his omission, deliberate omission, not to mention the fight against corruption or the anti-corruption bill. I think it was deliberate. And that is why I said, while I applaud the National Assembly member for passing the legislation, I hope there will be the political will to really see to its implementation. So, since you notice that the president himself has not has not mentioned it, he's not given any priority. So let us see what he does after the National Assembly have done their job, what he does with the anti-corruption bill. And I hope that nobody is going to cite to me that, look at the case of Khalifa Banja, look at the case of these three people. I hope nobody is going to cite to me those incidents as being the fight against corruption. I think it goes beyond that. I think it goes very close to people who are in the corridor of power, that really there are people who should be brought forward for prosecution.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I thank you very much on behalf of the Secretary General and the party leader for coming to this special session